This is the dead Alex Kentner, Jeff Voorhees. I'm standing on the beach here on Amity Island, Martha's Vineyard. I brought my dogs out on the beach where I was eating. And when you're hearing "Dun dun," you're gonna die. And from the dead Alex Kentner, Jeff Voorhees, here on Martha's Vineyard, Amity Island. You have a jawsome summer. Enjoy yourself.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast, powered by the Big 3 Roll-Up. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. I really appreciate all support. Before we jump into tonight's film review, I just want to give a quick shout-out to our website, don'tgooutthere.com. Anything you need to know about this podcast, you can find it there. We have our episodes, interviews, our store, our blog, and we have all of our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Give us a follow or a subscription on those platforms and keep up with us. We really appreciate all the feedback. And I'll just briefly touch on our blood donors. It's just our Patreon-esque type thing that we do. We have a lot of fans who ask how can they help support us, and just check out our website. We have a few different tiers, so just check that out.
By now, you've heard about our Patreon-esque tier donation program, to help with things like web hosting, podcast hosting, and just basically keeping the lights on, called Blood Donors. And by God, you want to help. Well, let me tell you more. We have different donation levels with tons of different perks, from, an autographed picture, an on-air shout-out, to picking a movie and joining us for an episode. Well, joining some of us. If you pick Jason X, I'm calling in sick that day. And we know that we could never repay your generosity, and we have some of the best fans in the world. But if you'd like to go ahead and donate even just $5, please go to don'tgooutthere.com, click donate. Disclaimer, we are referring to donating money and not actual blood, which makes this next part super awkward, but oh yes, there will be blood. But that's a figure of speech, not real blood, you animals.
And tonight we're taking on a truly iconic movie, I would say. It's we have a special guest, Miss Shan Petrusevich, a big fan of the show. We're super excited to have her. But we're taking on 1975's Jaws. That's right, one of the biggest blockbusters of all time. Shan, do you want to kick us off with some just general thoughts? Because I know you have an obsession with this movie, to say the least.
That would be an understatement. I don't remember exactly how old I was the first time I saw this movie, but probably in the ballpark, somewhere around like 4th grade. My mom always worked third shift, so every other weekend when she was working third shift, my dad would rent movies for us. He introduced me to Jaws, and the amount of money that he spent on rentals for, at the time, all 4 of the Jaws movies and all 3 of the Back to the Future movies is some ridiculous number that I don't even know. But it was just one of those movies that always stuck with me, and to this day, even though I own it and I've seen it more times than I can count, if I'm scrolling through TV and it comes on, I'm watching it. Like, it just happens. Last year was the 45th anniversary. I got to go see it at the drive-in. I set up the projector. I watched it outside in my backyard the next day. I don't ever get tired of this movie. There's so much to it. And with the anniversaries that have come out, like, there's always new stuff coming out. I actually told Nico last week or so, I actually watched a documentary that I actually had not seen before until I found it on YouTube. So I just keep finding different things that I enjoy to it, and I never tire of it.
Absolutely. Brian, do you want to go next? General thoughts?
Sure. So Jaws has always had a special place in my heart because, they filmed the second one in my hometown of Pensacola. And it was actually a big deal when I heard about that growing up. This was probably the first horror movie I ever saw. And I didn't really even realize it then. Every year, my family and I would take a vacation. Most years. I can remember growing up before middle school anyway. and we would go to Universal Studios most of those years. And every time I rode the Jaws ride, that's long since gone now. It would renew something in me, whether it be like nostalgia or what for this film. And I'd go home, pop it in, kind of be on a Jaws kick for a little bit. My neighbor, shout out Jonathan Creel, this was his, favorite movie of all time. So we would sit down and watch it when I was over there sometimes. He had the Amityville playset, Jurassic Park playset. He was rich. But, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with the runtime. Some movies I do, some movies I don't. It's a mixed bag. This one I don't. It's a simple premise, but I think it's strong writing, strong script. I think anyway. And hell, not just me. It won, 4 Oscars? Spielberg was like, 26, 27 with this one? It's unreal. At 26, I wasn't winning Oscars. Let's leave it at that. But anyway, here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Brian was making his second $1 million at 26. But anywho, I'll go with my general thoughts. Hadn't seen this movie in many, many moons before this review, and I rewatched it a couple weeks ago. And, I kind of saw the runtime. I was like, all right, I was just a little hesitant at first, but within the first 15 minutes, I was, sucked in. Really, I'm just going to be brief. Really enjoyed the movie. I think it's great. It still holds up to this day. And I had a blast watching it. I think it's a fantastic movie. Mike, you want to go next? General thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So again, this is a classic. Just kind of goes without saying. Obviously, I've told my horror movie story a million times, so I was late to the party. I knew of Jaws because it's so ingrained in the pop culture consciousness. I played high school football and some college football, and that's the theme for this is something, or the score for this is something every band plays for some reason, and so it's just an intimidating song, and that's something I really think makes this film kind of stand the test of time is the music as a character, which is something I really love about the original Halloween. I've said that before, and there's some other films too that stand strong. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Steven Spielberg. A lot of people are. The fact that he made this when he did at that age blows my mind. Like Brian mentioned, just really, really well shot film. I mean, there's some shots in here that, and I'm sure we're going to go over, especially Shan, just the fiasco that this movie went through to even get made in the first place. And so the fact that some of these shots made it in and they hold up and they stand the test of time is really a good testament to everybody that worked on that film. They should be damn proud of what they did because it's a classic. And now, look, there's some stuff that doesn't age great when you watch it through a modern lens. I tried to remove myself, but there is a couple things that I do think kind of bring this film down just a little bit, and I don't want to take anything away from it. Listen, I've received a lot of criticism of my criticisms of movies' runtimes. I still think there's some fat you could trim here. I know that's sacrilege, but it's not so long that I feel it a ton. But there's just we'll wait till we get to them. But there's some stuff I maybe not would take out, but would trim, here and there, or, maybe cut some dialogue. But again, a classic. Really did enjoy it, especially on this most recent rewatch. I really kind of ingrained myself into it, and I thought it was really, 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 really fun.
All right, so I did not grow up with this movie. This movie did not age with me. I watched it when I was like 8 or 9, and never again until this past week. So I've got a little bit of a different, or a lot of a different view on this movie than Brian and Shan. So on this rewatch, though, yes, it's a classic movie. It's absolutely iconic in a lot of the ways it's shot. I love how a lot of the movie is shot from sea level, like the camera at the water level to really give you that feel like you're in the water with the shark. It's very suspenseful. However, I do think that the movie is too long. There's just a lot of stuff, and we'll get to on the scene by scene things that I think could be cut and wouldn't affect it at all. Because my thing is, runtime is fine, but what you're showing on the screen, it needs to contribute to the story. And there's just some things that I feel like just don't really contribute to anything. We'll get to that. But the movie is iconic. The movie is great. Acting's great. The writing's great. Not to, well, actually, Brian, but I do need to, well, actually, something Brian said. It did win 3 Oscars. However, it did not win Best Picture. It won Best Sound, Best Film Ending, and Best Music. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest actually won Best Picture that year, but that's okay. Still won a lot of awards.
You just actually me. Wow.
Sorry.
No, I'm good. No,
I
that's
just,
fine. That's fine.
We got to protect the brand. We can't be putting false narratives out there to the masses. So, but anyway,
I'm gonna be honest. I did not even check to see whether that was just a nomination or whether it was a win.
Yeah, as a nominee.
Also, Spielberg was the only director not nominated in those Oscars for that had a Best Picture nominee that year.
Yep, that's true. So that's another Oscar tidbit there. Academy Awards really fucked it up that year. But no, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a great movie as well. But yeah, this movie, a lot of it does stand the test of time. Some of it does not, like Mike said. I don't think that Bruce looks great. And then I thought I was crazy for saying that. But then doing some research, even Spielberg himself hated the way that Bruce looked. So, he hated it in 1975. So for me to not like the way Bruce looked in 2021, it makes me feel better about it. But overall, it's a very good movie. I'm glad you picked it. It needed to be done. And I'm excited to break it down.
So I was going to touch on last week when you guys were talking about this was going to be the pick this week, about how it was the first PG-rated movie that you guys have ever done. Not everybody knows PG-13 hasn't always been a thing. It actually didn't come into effect until 1984. The first movie that actually ever came out under that rating was the original Red Dawn movie. So the reason that it came about was Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom came out, and it was rated PG. Lots of parents took their kids to see it. That movie had human sacrifice, child slaves dying in their parents' arms, eating snakes and brains, and so much more. So because of that movie, they were like, okay, it's not a PG, it's not an R. We need something in between. If you were to go back now, if that rating existed, Jaws obviously wouldn't just be PG. It would have rolled up to the PG-13. And I'll touch on a couple scenes throughout this where they actually cut it so they could get that PG rating, because they didn't want the R rating. They wanted to be able to have it marketed more widely.
All right, y'all. Y'all ready to jump into the scene by scene?
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, Shannon's already better than me at this show, so. I was like, I should quit. You guys need a new coach?
Yeah, Mike. Brian will be sending you your pink slip later. Anywho,
Hey, that's fine, brother.
I'm just kidding. We'd missed that luscious voice.
Hey, in the words of a not so famous college football coach, send me my check.
All right, the film starts with an ominous score with opening credits. Then we're underwater with a title card. Now we're on the beach with a bonfire going and kids having fun around it. They're playing guitars, making out, drinking, some usage of the marijuanas. Cassidy and Chrissy take off running as he asks her what they're doing. Going swimming, but Cassidy struggles to keep up. He's drunk and tumbles down the sandbar. Chrissy jumps into the ocean and takes a skinny dip. She yells for him to come in the water. Then we get a POV shot under the water up at her. She swims out further and that iconic score picks up. She gets jerked under the water quickly and she screams for help as she's dragged around in the water. Cassidy is passed out on the beach. She grabs onto the buoy and calls out for God. She's now dragged from the buoy again and goes under the water, and we see Cassidy is still passed out. Next day, we're in the Brody house, and he complains of sunlight in the house. His wife says the dogs need fed and asks if he sees the kids. Then they practice a New York accent together. Brody gets a call as Mama tends to their kid's cut on his arm. He tells the person on the call he'll be there in 20 minutes. He gets in his police truck and takes off. I wrote there's a beautiful shot of the view, and he passes an Amity Island billboard. He asks Cassidy about Chrissy and her not showing back up. He questions about his background some, and they take off running. Hendricks, the deputy, shows Brody a body washed up on shore covered with crabs feasting on the corpse. Back at the station, Polly nags everyone and answers a call from the coroner's office as he types. He hangs up the call and asks where's the beach closed signs. He storms out and heads to town. He's harassed by townfolk about his damaged window, and he makes it into the store. He gets some paint, brushes, and some post. Hendrix shows up in the truck and tells him about the Boy Scouts doing their mile swim. He has him go back to the office to make signs. He drives off before the mayor can get a hold of him. Brody gets to a dock and asks for a ferry ride to the kids, and the mayor just drives on the ferry with him. They think he's rushing into something serious here in his first summer. Amity needs the summer tourist money. The coroner says it wasn't a shark attack anymore, it was a boat accident. The mayor gives him some smooth talk and says if you yell shark, you get a real problem. Alex asks his mom if he can swim a little longer as he exits the water. Brody sits on the beach watching, and we see several people swimming, playing with their dogs. He gets a false sense of urgency when a diver appears as a shark, then another as a girl screams as they play in the water. His wife Ellen comforts him as an older man tells him the water's cold and they know he doesn't go in the water. The boy calls for his dog to no answer, and we see the stick floating. Underwater shot and the score intensifies. Alex is attacked on his floaty and the water turns red with his blood. Brody yells for everyone to get out. The people panic and they flee the water. Miss Kentner walks the beach calling for her son as the raft washes the shore. All right, Brian, that's the first two scenes I got, man. What you think?
The opening, one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history. You get from the point of view shots of the shark to the soundtrack, everything about it's awesome. It's perfect. And I'll go ahead and get to it here, but the mechanical problems with the sharks that they had, it's been very well documented and talked about. And in some cases kind of caused them to go with the whole less is more approach. But, as I've said this in other horror movies, I love that. And I think it's because of this movie that I want to always see like kind of less of the monster. Again, the whole creeping terror aspect, only showing bits and pieces here, for the most of it, and classic horror trope for sure. But creating that whole fear of the unknown, it's my favorite part of horror movies. I've gone on time and time again about it, and it probably stemmed for me from this film. A little tidbit. Spielberg said that the prop arm looked too fake in the scene where Chrissy's remains are discovered. So instead, they buried a female crew member in the sand with only her arm exposed. I thought that was pretty interesting. I will make a nitpick and say, are those two swimmers really so far away from everyone that nobody heard those screams? And I think that's an easy fix if you just make the two alone and out on a date or whatever. Not really sure there was a need for a whole party. Also it felt weird with Ellen calling her husband Martin, or calling her husband Chief and not Martin. I think that was just kind of maybe to establish his rank with you, maybe subconsciously as audience member, but I don't know. They could have done that another way. And you can definitely tell the Times as a drunk dude isn't even remotely considered as having possibly murdered the girl. I mean, he'd be a prime suspect nowadays, despite finding her remains or not. And the mayor's suit with those anchors everywhere, just wow. Lastly, friend of the show, Alex Kintner, who wasn't able to come on, but he did send us like this awesome video that he did. He still lives on Amity Island. We used some of it for the intro to this episode, but may try to post that somewhere else, maybe YouTube or TikTok. So stay tuned and keep a lookout for those. But he talks to us about this scene here, shows us the location. It's great, and as an audience member, like there's a lot of tension here. Seeing everyone just swimming about, you're waiting. You're just kind of sitting there waiting. And plus, I mean, there's just something like sinister as hell with like this happening in broad daylight with tons of people around. Lastly, I also want to point out that whole famous zoom effect that happens on Chief Brody's face here in the set of scenes. Hitchcock invented that technique, but obviously this is the first place I remember ever seeing it on film.
Yeah, I really like this opening scene here. It's a classic, like you mentioned. And when I see this movie, and again, like Dustin, I didn't necessarily grow up with this film, or it's not one that I've revisited a ton. So I like to compare it a lot to one of my favorites, and I think they kind of accomplished the same thing, and that is, but Halloween 1978, where they get the suspense, the mood, the atmosphere right. And what you don't see is way more terrifying than what you do see. And that's why I love this opening scene. The stuff under the water, the music as a character really, really shines through here. It's so strong. It's so good. And again, it's a classic. Da-na, da-na. That's such a classic thing that everyone knows. And it's all started right here. And it's still in 2021 holds up as a pretty terrifying score. Like it's really, really good. So I really like this opening scene. I like, the introduction of the characters here. I like Chief Brody. I think that Roy Scheider is really good in this role. This movie has some good acting. It's got some bad acting. The the opening scene, as classic as it is, as much as I like it, doesn't have the world's best acting or anything. Brian, you said something that I thought of on this most recent rewatch, and that is, man, that boyfriend would be a suspect if it weren't the 70s. Like, that is 1000% where I would go no matter what happened to her body. That's exactly, I'm sure there'd be some deep dive podcast about it. So, really good characters as far as our main core group. I like Ellen Birdie. I think their dynamic is good. His move, I love when they're going over the Boston accent. That's a funny scene to me. I know a lot of people kind of, you either love or you hate that. I think it's really good. The car, I can't do a Boston accent. I'm gonna let somebody else do it. But I think that's really fun. So, I didn't take a ton of notes while I was doing this most recent rewatch. One, because I wanted our guest host to really shine on this film, and I don't have to ramble, and that's great. So again, this movie hooked me right away, and I like the set of scenes quite a bit.
Okay, so the first thing, initially when they made this movie, they wanted to train a great white shark. Like, the mechanical sharks weren't the initial plan. They actually thought they could train a great white. Obviously, that's not even remotely possible. So they brought in the mechanical ones and then they had all the issues. They did test them before they put them in the water, but the problem is they tested them out in California in just one of the water tanks on Universal's lot. Well, there's a big difference in what fresh water and salt water does to electronics. So the minute that they put the shark in the salt water, it sunk immediately to the bottom. So that's how we got to the point where it was, they can only show so much. So, like you guys have mentioned, the music in this is absolutely its own character. They had to do something to convey what was going on with not always having to be able to show the shark. And honestly, I think if the movie that they had originally wanted to make, where you would have seen the shark a ton, because the shark only has in this whole movie 4 minutes of screen time where you actually physically see the shark, and it's pretty much all at the end. But when Spielberg met with John Williams about the score, the first time he played it for him, he's like, "This is a joke, right?" And he's like, "No." And Williams even said, he's like, "We'll do this when we can't actually see the shark, let you know it's coming. When we do know the shark is going to come, though, they're like, we're not going to score it because that way the audience isn't going to know the shark is coming." So you get those reactions, like when the shark pops up later at Brody. So going through all of it, they made their way kind of around the problems with filming. This first set of scenes, though, it was actually kind of disturbing how they got the sound for when Chrissy is drowning. That was actually done after they filmed it in the water. They actually took her into a sound studio, positioned her head turned up in front of a microphone, and they literally poured water down her throat and had her scream. So that's the sound of her getting waterboarded, essentially. You probably couldn't get away with doing something like that nowadays. The shots that go through this first set of scenes, it is iconic. Even if you're not a horror person, most people have seen this movie, and they know these opening set of scenes. Like, this is just one of those movies that, coming up on 46 years later, still continues to have influences into other areas, like other movies, just the general pop culture in general. And going through with all that, it's just I think that they did a great job with what they had. I think not having the shark work the way that it was supposed to honestly really worked in their favor. That's pretty much what I have in the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, on the first set of scenes and the last set of scenes are masterful. It's the in between that's the where I have the criticism. So on these, I'll keep it short and sweet. I love how the opening scene. I agree with what you said, Brian. I don't necessarily know that we needed the whole party. Like, we could have just had these two kids on the beach, like, by themselves. So I actually never thought about that till you said that. But yeah, the rest of the kids there, they don't come into play at all the rest of the film. The only thing I guess that he was trying to do is just show those kids got into town early. It's a town that people travel to, blah blah blah. But we didn't really need that. I was a little disappointed in the opening death and Chrissy's death because we didn't get blood. I know it was dark, but there wasn't a visible change in the way the water looked at all. So I would have liked to see a little bit of blood there. I know it's rated PG, so maybe they wanted to keep it light there, but I would have liked to see some blood there instead of just her being. We obviously know it's a shark movie and it was a shark attack, but just something else to drive that home. I did think it was funny when Chief Brody was typing up his notes and the report, and he typed shark attack. If you look on the line above shark attack, it says coroner's office, CORNER, not coroner. So I thought that was funny. A little bit of a fucked up fact. So when Chrissy's body is discovered and you see the crabs crawling all over them, the way that they got those crabs to move like that, the crabs weren't really moving, I guess, as much as they wanted them to. So they poured hot coffee on the crabs.
Oh, shit.
PETA would shut that shit down today. So, that's kind of fucked up.
Wow.
But this set of scenes, when we get later on the beach and Chief Brody is just looking around, kind of scoping it out and making sure that everything's on the up and up. You want to talk about building suspense. We don't see the villain or the killer, the antagonist, whatever you want to call Bruce. I say Bruce, but we'll get into that. The shark. We don't even see the shark yet, but this does just an absolute beautiful job of building suspense and letting you know that, something bad's going to happen. You just got that feeling like, oh no. And then when Alex dies, I thought the acting by her mother, or by Alex's mother, was great in this scene. And when she confronts Chief Brody, I mean, you want to talk about just driving it home, the feeling of a mother who's first scared to death because she can't find her kid and then grieving because she just lost her kid. That was some great acting there. That's what you want from a minor role, right? Like, she had 4 lines in the entire movie and one of the strongest acting performances in the film. So I thought that was great.
She wasn't an actress. She was a local.
Yeah, right. You're right. So that's even more impressive. So anyway, it's a great set of scenes to set the mood, build the suspense, and let you know this bad shit's going down in the water. So at this point, I'm all in. I was very pleasantly surprised upon my, rewatch after going over 20 years without seeing this film. So when I popped it in, I didn't pop it in, I rented it. When I turned it on the other day and I saw this first set of scenes, I'm thinking, hell yeah, let's go. I'm in.
I assume this is the police station. We're at the station, and it's full of people, and Brody has them all enter a room to have what I wrote, just a town meeting. The mayor takes questions, and they ask if the $3,000 bounty is cash or check. Brody tells the crowd they're putting out more summer deputies and have shark spotters, and he's asked if they're closing the beach. He says yes to a very pissed off crowd. The mayor says only for 24 hours, though. Nails on a chalkboard, and Quint tells them they know who he is and what he does for a living. He says he can catch it, but it won't be easy. He says he wants more than $3,000, though. He wants $10,000 for him, and he goes out by himself. They get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing. They'll take it under advisement, the mayor tells him as he walks out. No swimming signs are hung and posted, as Brody is at home and reads up on sharks and their behavior. Ellen says enough and gives him a strong drink. And then she asks if he wants to get drunk and fool around, and he's just all in for that. He freaks out when he realizes Michael is in their boat. He yells for him to get out, and Ellen tells him to calm down, basically. Then she looks in that book of a shark attacking a boat, and then she changes her tune and makes him get out of the boat. Ed Herter and Charlie post up on a dock and put a roast on a hook and throw it into the water. Brody is back in the book doing some research on sharks and sees a bunch of victims of shark attacks. Back to the pier, they notice the chain is going out rapidly, so fast that the whole dock post breaks off. Charlie is in the water and he's swimming back to the pier, but we see the shark swimming back towards him. He makes it back onto the pier just in time as the broken piece of pier washes ashore. Brody and Hendricks are back to the docks, and we see several fishermen getting ready to try and catch the shark. Hooper tries to get Brody's attention, but my man Brody is stressing. Hooper jokes that they're all going to die when they're being a smartass to him. Hooper finally introduces himself to Brody. A bunch of boats head out in a big cluster, and they all argue as they start to chum the water. We're in the corners now, and Hooper reads off it was a probable boating accident, but then he looks at the remains and reads off the injuries and asks for a glass of water. He says swiftly, this was not a boating accident. Then he says it again. He says, this is not a boating accident or a coral reef. This was a shark attack. All right, Brian, go ahead, brother.
So, intro to Quint, love him. Probably the best lines in the movie, in my opinion. I like the character arcs for our three main quote unquote, I guess, heroes that they go through. But Quint especially, how he basically turns into Captain Ahab by the end of it, or well, I guess his end. I think it's very fitting. Robert Shaw died 3 years after this movie was shot at a very young 51 years of age, a 51 that's getting younger and younger every day. But I think he did a tremendous job in this role. In fact, a little tidbit, according to Spielberg in the making of documentary, his original idea for introducing Quint was to kind of have him in the local movie theater watching Moby Dick, starring Gregory Peck. Quint was to be sitting in the back of the theater, laughing so loudly at the absurd special effects of the whale that he drove the other viewers to exit the theater. And eventually, Quint would be discovered sitting by himself. Spielberg said that the only thing that stopped him from doing that entire scene was Peck himself, who held the rights to that movie. When Spielberg approached him for permission to use the footage, Peck turned him down, not because he thought it was a bad idea, but because Peck didn't like his performance in Moby Dick and didn't want the film to ever be seen again. So, but I like how it turned out here better, honestly. Anyway, also a little tidbit in a biography, Spielberg revealed that Robert Duvall had encouraged him to actually make the movie, and in return, Spielberg offered Duvall the role of Martin Brody, and he turned it down. So he feared it might make him, too famous.
Which is nuts because Robert Duvall is coming off of starring as Tom in The Godfather.
Right.
Like an iconic role.
Wait,
I know, that's crazy. But Duvall did actually want to play Quint, but Spielberg told him he was too young. So anyway, I think it all turned out well, like it's supposed to. Yeah. It's definitely some decent tension, with the whole Charlie incident, but other than that, I think that this set of scenes, there was a lot that could have been cut. If you were going to cut some stuff out of this film, there's some places where I do make notes of that, and I think this is one of them. And I'll get out of here with this, and this may be a hot take, but you just have those actors that where you respect them. I respect their craft. The work he does is brilliant, but I just don't like Richard Dreyfuss. Again, completely me. It's completely me. But I think it's because the first thing I ever saw him in was What About Bob? And ever since then, it's just I can't, it's just me. And so so Dreyfuss actually was tested and cast at the suggestion of George Lucas, who had just worked on him with American Graffiti, another great movie. Again, Dreyfuss, great actor. Charges us $1,000, by the way, if you want to go get a cameo from him. But yeah, exactly. But
he originally didn't want to do the movie, though. He originally said that he would rather watch it than shoot it.
Right. Well, turns out he was probably right.
So, Brian, what you're saying is Ethan Hawke would have been a better choice?
Or Brad Pitt, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Come on. Yeah, so this set of scenes kind of throws in a lot of people. Again, you get the mayor, and you get the people of the town, And I like a lot of that story. I don't necessarily disagree with you, Brian, that I would cut some. Like, there's some stuff that I would probably cut out of here, but I actually like this, the way this story goes. I like the mayor kind of, saying "f that." It's about our economy. How topical. And you, you get a sense of the dynamic of good and evil, right and wrong, and all of that stuff. But you can also kind of see, well, hey, this weekend is where we make our bank, man. And so I get it. And by the way, as much as you don't like Richard Dreyfuss, Brian, I love this character of Hooper. I think he adds something to this film. Um, and I understand not liking necessarily Dreyfuss's acting, but I think the dynamic of the three main characters between Brody, Hooper, and Quint is really awesome. Like, they're, as we go, and this is later, but you get the introduction of everybody here. I think it's great. And again, another set of scenes I didn't take a ton of notes on because something Dustin touched on, but I'm not as harsh on the middle of this movie as he is. But there is a lot of just kind of dialogue, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I like a good movie that kind of sucks me in, and one of my favorite films of all time is like everyone else, Shawshank, and half of that movie is just them talking. And so I understand that that's needed, but it just doesn't play well as far as taking notes on scenes. Like, there's just not a ton happening to me, but I think it's really, really good. And I kind of agree with Dustin. It is really good, but if you were gonna cut something, and I agree with Brian too, if you're gonna cut something, there's some stuff here that you could trim the fat. I still think there's another set of scenes later in the movie that you could really trim, and that would probably help the film out a little bit. But again, I love all the acting from our main characters here, and I like the plot as it goes along. So, really not my favorite set of scenes by any means, but not bad either.
You brought up talking about the scene where originally they were going to introduce Quint watching Moby Dick. So originally Spielberg wasn't the one that was going to direct the movie. It was going to be Dick Richards. He ended up getting fired because after like the first meeting with the executives, he was explaining like, this is what my opening shot's going to be. I'm going to have the camera come out of the water. It's going to show the town. And then the whale, instead of the shark, would come out of the water. So the producers are like, we're not making Moby Dick. We don't want to work with someone who doesn't know the difference between a whale and a shark. So he got fired. And that was how Spielberg ended up being brought into it. So I don't know if any of you guys have ever read the book. The book, this is one of those rare instances where the movie is better than the book. And I've read the book. Not great. Even Spielberg said, like, when he finished reading the book, he found himself rooting for the shark because the humans in the book were so unlikable. He even told Dreyfuss, don't read the book. Like, what we're shooting and what is in that book, they're not the same thing. And I'll touch on a couple other differences that come up between those. Everything with the mayor of kind of like not wanting to close the beaches and being it's about money and all of that, some of that definitely hit a little harder after the last year and a half. But in the book, it's a really weird concept where like he doesn't want to close the beaches because he owes money to the mafia. I don't remember exactly how it all goes down, but it's a horrible storyline. So at least here, it's like, it just makes a little more sense. Like, hey, we're a summer town. This is what we need to do. So he played that much better. In starting with, like, we already talked about how the music is kind of its own character. The scene with Charlie and stuff where they're trying to lure it with the roast at night. I mean, when you see the pier moving back in towards the shore, like, it's just one more way that they kind of got around the fact of, I mean, they joke, if you watch any, like, clip, documentary, anything, like, the ongoing joke, like, was the shark is not working. That's all you ever heard over the radio. And so this was just another way to kind of go in there and say, okay, well, we're telling you the shark is there, even though we can't show it to you. You just need to know it's there. Pretty much the last thing, when Hooper first arrives, and this wasn't something that I ever caught when I was younger, the first person he talks to is Ben Gardner. Because all of a sudden, like later on, you're like, I don't know who this guy is in the water, or where he came from and why we should know him. It's the first person that he talks to when he gets off the boat. Just things you learn as you like continue to watch the movie over and over again that you might not catch like on the first couple viewings.
Yeah, and the guy that played Ben Gardner was a local as well, so that was kind of cool. So in this set of scenes, yeah, the town meeting. I thought the town meeting, I liked it. It really, man, I really hate this fucking mayor, man. Like, you want to talk about someone who just does not give a shit about his people. But it's also funny because, like, you kind of touched on it there, Shan, but, like, you know, I'm the last person to ever make anything political or bring politics up, but it's really like this movie is an allegory for 2020, right? Like,
Yep.
you got a killer out there, but I can't afford to shut down the town or the beach. And then, okay, well, fine, we'll shut it, but only for a limited time, 24 hours. And so I thought that was funny to watch back, given what we've been through over the past year and a half. But when we get introduced to Quint, man, you want to talk about a guy that just grabs your attention. But I wanted to smack the shit out of him through my screen for the nails on the chalkboard. Like, there's a different way to command attention in the room. Like, I hate that. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. I hate that sound. But his monologue was fantastic. And, you know, the only other thing that I'm going to touch on this set of scenes, because you guys pretty much touched on everything else, though, was when they go back to the coroner's office and he's looking at the body and examining the bite radius and all this stuff. The one thing that sticks out to me, other than, you know, opposite of Brian, I like Richard Dreyfuss. I think he's a good actor. So other than his acting there, is when he pulls the arm up out of the tray, I thought the arm kind of looked like shit. Like, it had a real rubbery look to it. It looked like a prosthetic arm. And that kind of, maybe that's one of those things that, like, I'm looking at it with 2021 eyes, and given the time, it looked great. I thought the wound on the arm looked fantastic. It was the skin up towards the hand and the forearm that I was like, man, that kind of looks like a rubber plastic arm. It stood out to me. But other than that, this isn't the set of scenes yet to where I'm like, okay, this should not be in the movie. This movie needs to be about 1 hour and 45 minutes instead of 2 hours and 4 minutes. So this set of scenes you could have trimmed some of the dialogue, but I don't have a problem with it as of yet.
But to be fair, I think Dreyfuss is a great actor too.
No, you just shat all over him. Don't worry about it.
I just don't like him.
Anywho, just kidding. On an unrelated topic, Richard Dreyfuss's line of Days of the Dead was so long, it was ridiculous. Back to the pier, and they're hanging up their catch, a big tiger shark. The reporter wants a shot for the paper. Quint's boat passes by and looks on as Hooper does measurements on the shark's mouth. Picture taken out, and Brody seems relieved. The mayor seems relieved too. Hooper is telling the fisherman that may not be the shark. Hooper now tells Brody that it's 100 to 1 chance that those bozos caught the actual shark. The bite radius doesn't add up. He wants to cut open the shark to make sure it's it. Mayor isn't on board with the idea. Miss Kentner in her black dress confronts Chief Brody and slaps his face crying. And like Dustin mentioned, this is a great scene with her. The crowd goes silent. She says she just found out about the girl being killed and that Chief Brody knew about it, but let people swim anyways. My boy is dead now and there's nothing you can do about it. I wanted you to know that. She cries and walks away. The mayor apologizes and says she's wrong. The mayor says to cut the shark down and dump it later. Back home, Brody is shaken up from the incident and sits at the dinner table with his son and his wife nearby. He asks for a kiss, and he says he needs it from his son. Knock at the door, and it's Hooper. He asks to talk to Chief. He brought wine over. He asks about his day, then they laugh. He then takes Brody's dinner and eats it, and I just wrote, "Make yourself at home, my man." He tells Ellen he loves sharks as Brody opens up the bottle of red wine. Hooper doesn't believe it was a shark who killed the 2 victims. He tells Brody he's the only rational man left after he leaves tomorrow. Ellen tells Hooper Brody hates water now, and now he asks about the shark behavior and attacks. He says, let's have one more drink and then go cut into that shark. They get to the shark, and Hooper starts to open it up. Hooper pulls out a bunch of junk, including a Louisiana license plate. This isn't the shark. Hooper is about to drag Brody out onto the water to find the shark. It's a night feeder. He says he isn't drunk enough for all this. He tells Hooper about how rough New York was as he sips on the white wine. Brody is impressed by Hooper's boat and his wealth. They read the sonar and they found something. They use the spotlight and see Ben Gardner's banged up boat floating there. Hooper says he's got to dive in and check the hull. He puts on his scuba gear and he tells Brody not to do anything. He dives in the water and he finds a giant shark tooth in like the wood of the hull. He searches more and is jump scared by Ben's body like floating through the hole in the boat. And then he drops the tooth to the bottom. All right, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, just a little tidbit here. Roy Schneider actually stated that in an interview that the scene where Lee Fierro, Mrs. Kittner, smacks him in the face, she was actually hitting him. Apparently, the actress could not fake slap at all, and so like the 17 takes he said were some of the quote unquote most painful of his acting career. And apparently, she slapped him one time, and his glasses even fell off. So I feel for the guy there. I do like this bit here for the guilt it kind of places in the drive that it gives to Brody, for the rest of the movie. It does further the whole human aspect of this for me, and that and the relationship between the three leads, which we haven't really gotten to yet. And I want to state for the record in 4K here, I have it written down. Dreyfuss really is a great actor, despite how I feel about the guy. He shows it time and time again throughout this entire movie, but like here in this group of scenes when he's pulling that stuff out of the shark, I think he did a great job acting disgusted, but he also had to deliver a lot of dialogue. So something, we've seen a lot of people mess up when they're trying to do things like that, in other movies. Lastly, it had been so long since I'd seen this. Honestly, I'd forgotten a lot of this, like even the whole jump scare with the head, and apparently that was not even originally scripted. Spielberg says he got greedy after he saw the preview audience's reaction to the scene where the shark jumps out behind Brody's head and wanted one more scare. So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I actually like the set of scenes. I like, them pulling the shark out of the water. I like all of that. I like that it's a shark. It's not the shark. It kind of sets up one of those things where like, oh, this is bad, but it's a heck of a lot worse. There's this gigantic shark in the water. And so I actually really like that. And you mentioned Dreyfuss in this set of scenes. I think he's really great. The one thing I take away from this set of scenes, and I wrote it down multiple times, this is where Spielberg shines to me. It's these scenes where they get on the boat and they're in the water, and the way that the lighting is used, the way that they move the camera from above the water, under the water, and you get the head, which I actually think is done really, really well. Like, I know the head doesn't look awesome in 2021 eyes, but man, I don't know. I think that's one of those ones that holds the test of time. I think it's really, really good. And it is a fun jump scare. Whether Spielberg got greedy or not is one thing, but I think those scenes are shot so well, and I think that Schneider and Dreyfuss do a great job with their dialogue, but more so their fear. It's not a fear on Hooper's part, but their for lack of a better word, their fear. They're still not sure exactly what they're dealing with. They know it's a shark, but it's not like any other shark that anyone has ever dealt with before. And I think that comes through in the acting, and I think the scenes were, again, I love scenes in the dark, and when it's lit right and it's shot really well, which is what Spielberg does here, I think it's great. And so that's really what I took away from this set of scenes. Is it's not so much the dialogue, not so much the story narrative as we keep going, but just how well made this movie is right here in this section.
The biggest part of this set of scenes is definitely, it's more about making a connection with the characters. Like, obviously you feel Mrs. Kintner's grief. Like, you have to. Everybody's happy, celebrating, and she just kind of walks in and shuts that all down immediately because she's grieving. And like she said, it could have been avoided, but unfortunately they had to keep it open, so that didn't happen. The tiger shark, it was actually a real shark. They did get to use a real shark for that one, and in one other section later that I'll touch on. But they shipped it to the set, and they didn't think about the fact that it was a dead animal, and what do dead things do? They decompose. So I guess this thing smelled absolutely horrible. So, like, talking about saying Dreyfus was like doing a really good job acting disgusted as he was like going through the stomach later. If they used the same shark, he probably wasn't acting. That was probably just pure disgust, because I guess it was just like when they were trying to do the pictures and stuff, the actors were thoroughly grossed out because of how bad it all smelled, especially in the summer, you can imagine. The license plate that he actually pulls out of the shark's stomach, it starts with 007, and that was Spielberg throwing in because at some point he wanted to actually like shoot a Bond movie. So that was like his way of kind of throwing that in there. And Robert Shaw actually was in a Bond movie. I don't remember which one though. Brian, you touched on with how originally the head scene with Ben Gardner wasn't in there. Yeah, Spielberg didn't really like the way that it, like, he wanted audiences to react, and they just didn't. So they actually reshot that after they were done at Martha's Vineyard. That actually was shot in a pool. So to get it to look like they were actually in the ocean, because obviously pool ideally should have clear water to it. So they poured milk in there to just give it enough of like a murky look to it. And then they shot it there. I don't know if it's the actual original head that was used underwater, but if you go to Universal Studios down in Florida in the Monster Makeup Show, they have a bunch of like movie props, and they have that head down there actually. Kind of neat to see in person.
Yes.
There's a lot of cool stuff in there, so if you ever go there, make sure to take the time to go in there and look at the movie props in there. With the aquatic shooting, obviously, like I said earlier, electronics and water in general don't mix real well. So they had to come up with kind of a different way to shoot some of the stuff. And so the cinematographer, Bill Butler, he actually like developed a new type of equipment. Basically, he made the equivalent essentially of an OtterBox for their camera. So you put the camera inside the box, it was sealed inside there. They had it put on a rig so that they control it and hold it steady. And that's how they were able to get the shots where it was half in the water, half out of the water. I'm going to assume they used it for some of the completely underwater stuff too. But those weren't shots that you saw before. And it definitely made a difference in kind of how they were able to convey some stuff. He actually was the cinematographer on a movie you guys have also reviewed, Anaconda.
That thing is blowing up on YouTube, by the way. Blowing up on YouTube.
Well, when you have Jennifer Lopez and Ice Cube, Christopher Walken, and a great creature feature that yours truly selected, what do you expect?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I expect that you don't want none unless you got buns, son.
All right. Anyway.
It was a good day. All right, never mind.
The Lakers beat the Supersonics. So
don't
this set of scenes
on that song.
This set of scenes is what I'm talking about when I said the runtime could have been condensed. I could have done without Hooper coming over to the house at all. That whole scene. I don't need Chief sitting at his table making faces with his kid. I don't need Hooper coming over, bringing the wine, eating the dinner, because I don't feel like that contributed to anything. We know that Chief Brody is stressed the fuck out, so I don't need to see him physically stressed out, making faces with his kids and all that. It's good acting, but when you're talking about the long runtime and how this movie kind of weighed on me in that regard, that whole scene could have been set off. Now, I think, Shannon, you mentioned it earlier, how in the book there's a love story, a secondary story between Hooper and Mrs. Brody. So
I didn't
maybe
mention
that's
that one, but that was another one that was thoroughly despised in the book.
okay. Yeah, exactly. So in the book, there's the she's apparently having an affair with Hooper or whatever. So maybe that's, I don't know. Like, it would make more sense if that's the reason he comes over to the house, is to just be close to her. But that storyline was abandoned, and
Thank
it just
God.
didn't do anything. It didn't do anything. That could have been done with a phone call. Hooper calls the house. Hey, I don't feel good about this. Let's go cut the shark open. Okay, I'm on my way.
Man,
Saves you 10
that man
minutes.
don't have a phone. That man don't have a phone.
Blade don't pay no taxes.
Look at
That could
man.
have saved 10 minutes. And then you got to love the chief of police driving while shit hammered. Like, he poured a glass full of wine and then took the wine bottle with him and then goes boating while he's drinking. Like, that was actually funny to me. What a shitty cop. Deputy Dewey was definitely better.
Jesus.
And then I did get a good chuckle when
See y'all next week.
when he's showing all the equipment, and he goes, "Are you rich?" And he says, "Yes." Like,
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know why that just made me laugh. How he's like,
that's one of the best lines in the
Yeah.
film, dude. I'm so glad you said that. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
No one ever
absolutely.
says, yes, actually, I am rich.
no, because most people like Mike deny their wealth for some reason.
Mike, get out
then-
of here. Out of here.
The gentleman has the floor, please. And then I love how Hooper, he's an oceanographer or whatever the hell his title is, but there's a fucking killer shark in the water. He suspects that there's a great white in these waters, and he's just going to jump right in to examine the bottom of the ship. I don't think so. That doesn't work for me. But then I do love how he's supposed to know what the hell he's going on and be, and so he should be on edge. Like, he should be fully prepared for whatever comes at him while he's under the water. And a head pokes its head through the hole, and he drops the shark tooth. Like, the one piece of evidence that you could take to the mayor and be like, "Look, I told you." And you just drop it because of a dead body. What a bitch. And then the thing about the jump scare was it was very well done. Like, you want to talk about perfect timing, because when he jumps in the water, you're tense as hell because you're like, "Oh God, there's a shark. He's going to get eaten." And then you're like, "Aha, no, it's just a dead body." But the thing that bothered me about the dead body is, why was he missing an eye? Because if the shark is what killed him, if the shark's what got him, the shark would have ripped off more of his face than just an eye. Like that, I don't know. That was kind of weird to me. But the
Fish probably eating it.
that's probably true. But
I mean, that was
I
kind
don't
of the
know.
only thing I ever thought of.
It was kind of distracting for me. I guess to show off your effects department there, and it looked great. It just, I would have preferred they did like he was missing a chunk of his head or something, like his face was missing. But no, we got one eyeball's gone. Okay, but other than that, like I said, this set of scenes right here cut off the first half of it completely, and we're still on board with a good movie.
I agree with you, Dustin, about the scene at the house and eating dinner and stuff. I just don't know if if it's there, I would like it to be shorter. That's really my only gripe.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, it just didn't move the story forward to me.
Brody and Hooper tell the mayor about what they saw, and they say they have to close the beach. The mayor asks for the tooth, but he dropped it. He then questions what type of shark it is and says they can't close the beach. They depend on the money. The mayor is more upset about the billboard being vandalized instead of trying to kill the killer shark. Hooper explains how grave their situation is. He still doesn't care. He thinks Hooper just wants into National Geographic. Mayor says, do what you have to do to be safe, but the beaches will be open. Brody says we need more men patrolling. We see Amity Island filling up full of people. Brody is on the beach radioing to the guys on the boats as the news reporter reports on the killer shark full of beachgoers. The mayor is pissed no one is in the water. He walks up to Mr. Posner, and asks him to get into the water. He drags his wife and their, I assume, grandkids into the water. That encourages everyone else to get in. Helicopters monitor from above. Birdie stops his son as they go to launch the boat, and he asks him to put it in the pond or the estuary instead. We see shots of different swimmers and some POV shots under the water. The mayor tells the news they killed a large predator and says it's beautiful out and encourages people to come. Now we see a shark fin swimming toward people, and a girl starts to freak out. She screams and swims back to shore, and others panic as they see it. The guys on the boats call out shark, and they have people exit the water, and I wrote it's chaos. The fin was all a prank from two little kids. They have guns pointed at them as they emerge from the water. Birdie finds out it was a hoax, but a girl painting now cries out shark over and over. Shark in the estuary where Birdie's son is. Birdie runs to the estuary, and we see Michael's boat and another small boat, and the shark swimming full speed at it. The shark flips the man's boat over and the boy's boat. We see a huge shark bite the man's leg and attack his upper body. The water fills with blood. It swims past Michael and goes under the water again. Birdie and Ellen run to the beach, and the boys all make it out and onto the beach. Michael is in major shock. Mama thinks he's dead. And now we get a glimpse of Brody looking out into the ocean. All right, Brian, go ahead.
There's so much jacked up in this beach scene, and that's so funny, Nico, that you said what you read your notes and you say grandparents, because I have written down. I said first of all, what it says. First of all, the mayor asking what I have to hope is grandparents. I thought that was funny. Anyway, why he isn't in the water, but like is obviously scared, and then like he grabs his kids and wife and is basically like, okay, hell, if I'm getting fucking eaten, you guys are too. So, and why does the chief of police not have a gun? By the way, he's like running around asking everyone if they have a gun. Again, and I'm probably going to catch some heat for this one too, but you know, some of this set of scenes could have been cut. Like, there's a lot of beef, and it's all good, but if I'm looking at it from like a pacing standpoint, I'd say like some of this could have gone. I mean, but hell, what the hell do I know? I'm just some yap giving my opinion. It doesn't matter. Now, is it great character development? Yes. Is this a great movie? Yes. But I almost like kind of liken it to Rocky, another movie that, I mean, that one did win Best Picture. But it's slow in a lot of parts, and I think maybe that's just a time period. So while I'm fine with it, I can understand if someone isn't. Like for instance, my son, who's I don't know what is it, Gen Z. I don't even know what the latest. He's 9 years old. I don't know, but he's of the technology generation where everything he's got to have like instant gratification, and so when he's watching this for the first time, he's like, oh my god, like something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen. So anyway, so I'm just saying, like, if you're trying to cut it down some, I think this would be a good set of scenes to do it.
Brian, you nailed the wording that I have wrote down right here. This is where the pace of the movie loses me a little bit. And I like the story we're telling here with the 4th of July, the mayor, the sheriff. Like, I really like all that. And I like the mayor and Hooper going back and forth, back and forth. Their argument cracks me up. But some of this stuff at the beach takes a long time to get to where we're going. And again, I know they're trying to kind of emotionally pull me in and all that, but I just think, like you mentioned, Brian, and this is kind of really all I have for this bulk of scenes is the movie is. This is where the movie sometimes, if I'm not really in the mood for Jaws, which sometimes I am and I love it and I think it's great, but if I'm not really in the mood for Jaws and I'm watching it more for a writing note standpoint, it has a hard time keeping my interest. And it's not that it's not good, it's just that the pacing kind of dips, it slows down. And again, one of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption, does that a ton. So yeah. I'm kind of a hypocrite. I'm not denying that. But if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And sometimes, especially in this set of scenes, it doesn't. And the acting is good. It's well shot. The story, I'm fine with it. But like you said, there's just some fat here that to me could be cut and make a more concise film. And again, God, it feels so weird to kind of critique a classic this way. But you kind of have to find nitpicks. That's kind of our job here. And instead of just kind of blowing smoke and giving every movie its flowers. So what I took away from this set of scenes is it's good, but do I need every little bit of this, all this dialogue, all this character development? We're, all this is kind of established. We know who's good, we know who's bad, and I think it just gets a little slow here. And it's not the last time it gets a little slow. But that's kind of my takeaway here. And I don't want to repeat anything anyone else says. So that's kind of all I have. But again, I don't hate it. I just think it loses me a little bit the more I rewatch it.
Yeah, this is definitely that kind of like middle of the movie where things definitely slow down a little bit. And I get where certain parts of it, it's like, okay, you're just kind of trying to establish this is where we're going next. This is how we're going to lead into, this is how we have to get to the end. When they are kind of like, all the tourists are arriving, they're getting off the boat, they're like looking at shark souvenirs that all of a sudden just magically, like, you haven't had a shark problem around here, but now you have all this stuff to sell. Who's getting off of a boat for vacation to walk past and be like, yeah, let's go in the water where they have all these sharks apparently? Like, that doesn't seem like, if you're trying to get more tourists there, seems like a real good marketing idea. Just my idea. The reporter that is actually on the beach before they get people in the water, that is actually Peter Benchley, who wrote the book. He was on set for most of the movie. They gave him that small cameo. He ends up getting kicked off the set towards the end of the movie because he hated the way that Spielberg was ending the movie. So he actually got kicked off the set of basically his movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was kind of odd, but that was, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of differences between the book and the movie. And as the movie progressed, like, Benchley just was not a fan. So they finally got tired of it. It was like, okay, you're gone. See ya. You guys are all sports fans, so this will probably interest you. One of the radios that's playing as people are all sitting on the beach here, the voice that is on the radio is actually the legendary sports announcer Charlie Jones. Like, everything he's saying is fictional, but it was actually him doing the voice for it for the movie.
Oh, nice.
So that was something new that I learned recently.
That's cool.
With the attack in the estuary, that was going to be a lot more brutal. Just like Alex Kittner's death. And if you go on YouTube, you can find video of both of the original footage for both those attacks where they had to trim them down so they could keep that PG rating. And they're terrifying. Like, the movie definitely, like, it was one of those lasting impact things that after this movie came out, like, people really did not want to go swimming.
I'll have to check those out.
I'm so glad you said that, man, by the way.
It impacted people going to the beach. Like, people just didn't want to go in the water. I mean, people were even afraid. Like, I remember as a kid being, and I actually wanted to be Hooper when I was younger. Like, I was going to go into sharks. Like, that is how much I have loved this movie for that long.
I'm still scared of the water, to be honest.
My dream is to go cage diving.
Oh, whoo, no, ma'am.
No, thank you.
But this movie, I'm so glad you said that, Shan. This movie did elevate everyone's fear, and it's still in people's consciousness because of this movie. There's no doubt about it.
I mean,
I would like to do one of those. Don't they have those not drive-ins, but basically where you're like in the water floating in a raft and you get to watch this movie on the big screen.
The
I want to
Alamo
do that.
Draft
That would
House
be awesome.
down in Texas. And I didn't find, I spent a summer in Texas and I didn't know about it at the time. And I definitely would love to go down there one of these years when they do it. But yeah, no, they put everybody in a pond and it's a big Jaws fest. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. There's going to be people screwing around and sneaking up under, like, the actress who yelled, "Oh my God," like, as what she thinks is the real shark. Fun fact, that was actually the mother from the original Fright Night.
Okay, nice.
So this set of scenes just further drives home my point before about the mayor being an absolute dick. Just not giving a shit about his constituents. Who cares if everyone dies? I'm still the mayor, kind of thing. I hated how I don't know. Like he went from let's just keep everything open because the economy depends on it to he just like turned into a, oh, you'd love that to be true, huh? So you can get in National Geographic. Like he went from saying no, we can't afford to do it to feeling like this was all just a publicity stunt from Hooper trying to get famous. Like that kind of was a weird turn there for me. What an asshole that guy is. But this goes back to what I saw. Hooper should have held onto that damn tooth, man. You're under the water where a shark is. You got to be prepared for everything. Can't be dropping the one piece of evidence that you need. And then, the beach scene here, like you said, Brian, how old was that guy when he fathered those two young children? Dear God. But, and man, Mayor, again, just complete dickhead. Hey, I need the people not to be scared. You and your entire family, go risk your lives. Like, holy shit, man. But another thing that stands out in this set of scenes is that had this taken place in 2021, those kids in the water with the fake fin would have been dead.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
100%. They would have got shot in the face while they're trying to pull a prank. But, I did think it was a funny line there from Mike, Chief Brody's kid, when he's like, the pool's for old ladies. I thought that was funny when Chief Brody was like, yeah, it is for old ladies, but do this for your old man. I like that. That was a good line there. And then just phenomenal. I loved this kill. I love the shark hauling ass through the water, knocking the boat over, and then the blood eruption that we get in the water, and then the severed leg floating down to the ocean floor. Spoiler, that's probably my favorite kill of the movie. I love that kill. I thought it looked great, and it was shocking because you just came off a hoax. You're thinking, is this another joke? What's going on here? Is this more pranksters? Oh shit, no, it's a real shark. And then you add to the tense factor because Chief Brody's kid is in that same part of the water. So I thought this was a good set of scenes. I do agree with what you guys said. There was a little bit of extra meat that could have been, or extra fat that could have been trimmed as far as saving the runtime. But the scene that I mentioned before and a scene that we're about to get into is really where I wanted to trim the fat. So I'm okay with it here.
I agree with you, Dustin. That spoiler, that's my favorite kill. The nurse tells them that this is the part I think you could cut. I think you could cut this some of this hospital stuff. The nurse tells them he's okay. He's just in shock, talking about their son. He asks Ellen to take their other son home, and she says, back to New York. Birdie meets with the mayor, and he apologizes to him. The mayor still thinks he was in the town's best interest. He smokes a cigarette right in the hospital and says, my kids were on that beach too. Birdie makes him sign the contract to hire Quint. He wants $200 a day regardless and $10,000 if he catches it, and Birdie agrees. Quint has a lot of asks, I wrote. Chief and Hooper look around at Quint's house. Chief doesn't like his homemade liquor. Quint doesn't think Hooper is man enough to be catching this shark. He makes him tie a certain knot, then grabs his hands. He says he has city hands. He thinks he should go alone. He says he'll take him for ballast. Quint questions Hooper's shark cage and sings farewell and adieu to you when he says he's getting into the cage in the water. Ellen walks Birdie to the boat, and we hear Quint yelling. Birdie hugs his wife bye, and Quint tells him to hurry. And I just wrote, Quint is hilarious. Awesome shot now through a shark jaw in Quint's house of the vessel taking off to sea. Birdie is chumming the water, and Quint tells of his stories catching a 16-footer and needing 2 barrels to bring it up. Birdie accidentally lets the compressed air free, and Hooper goes off on him. He says these tanks could blow up. Quint's fishing reel has a bit of line start to go out, and he puts his chest strap on and attaches himself to the reel. He grabs a rod, and the reel starts to scream. He has Hooper put the boat in reverse, and Birdie pour water on the reel to keep it cool. Quint says he's a smart fish and has gone under the boat. He gives Birdie the rod, and Hooper thinks it's a game fish, but then the piano wire snaps. It was bitten through. He says college boys won't admit when they're wrong, and then he mocks Quint as he passes by, which was pretty funny. Quint gives Hooper hell on driving the boat. Quint is in the watchtower and tells Birdie to start the chum line again. Hooper is playing cards, and Quint works on his reel. The shark emerges and shows himself as he throws out chum. Brody backs into the room with Quint and gives, the iconic line, "You're going to need a bigger boat." The giant shark swims straight towards the boat and beside it. It's a 25-footer, Quint says. The shark circles the boat as Quint sets up his gun. Quint lies over the radio and has Brody steer the boat. He's going to shoot the shark with the barrels. Hooper ties the rope to the barrels and Quint shoots it. They chase after the shark in the boat, but it pulls the barrels under. Quint gives the guys a stare. Brody brings up getting a bigger boat again, and then they wait until they find it. And the next scene is when it's the three guys at nighttime. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, as many times as I've watched this might be the first time that I ever realized that he said he brought back up needing a bigger boat again. I didn't realize it until this watch.
Bro, he beats that to death.
Yeah, it's like for real, bigger boat. And I know this is in the trivia facts on IMDb, but it's pretty well known that Dreyfuss and Shaw didn't like each other in real life, which obviously that resulted in some great tension between the two, given their roles. But that's what I was talking about earlier. Like these three leads, they feel like real people. You've got the Quint Ahab character arc, which I kind of talked about earlier, and then you've got the Hooper character arc where he has to basically like earn everybody's respect, and then you got Brody who's kind of the in between of the two, like the us character, the audience basically. It meshes very well. Quint's on some good drugs, isn't he? He's Joker's almost a caricature of himself. Like he reminds me here of like an over the top Pirates of the Caribbean actor from like Disney World or something. I don't know. And like man, this just almost lulls you into this like false sense of security with these guys. Because you're having a good time with them, you're hanging out with them, and then you get that epic scene with the shark, and Brody's improvised. We're gonna need a bigger boat line. And from this point forward, the whole tone of the movie changes, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of touched on in the last set of scenes. And earlier in our review, I like these three in their dynamic. I like all three of their acting. I think they play their characters really, really well. But this is, to me, where the movie starts to drag just a little bit. And it's not that I don't like their dialogue, the way they kind of quip back and forth, especially Hooper and Quint. I think that's really good, and and the sheriff is in the middle. But I just think this is where, and it's really the next set of scenes where you can kind of feel it. Like I know there's a really good scene in that, but from here until we get to that scene, it just kind of drags, man. And I like their dynamic, and I think them on the boat it starts out kind of fun, and I just kind of feel like there's some stuff in here that kind of repeats itself. Like, oh, this guy slips up, he messes, he kind of messes up, he's an idiot, and then this and the other two kind of help him, help him kind of figure out how to be on this boat. Like now, to be fair, the shot, and I know it's overdone, and I know it's oversaid, but you're going to need a bigger boat line. First of all, 9 times out of 10 is misquoted, and I'm guilty of it myself. But that's a great line. That's a great shot by Spielberg. The shark, the chum, it's all fantastic stuff, and it's iconic for a reason. And so I love all of that. I just kind of feel like some of this stuff starts to run long in the tooth, where I just would like to get to our final shark and 3-man encounter. 3 men and a shark, not 3 men and a baby, 3 men and a shark. That's kind of where I would like to see this start. Yeah, 3 men and a baby is great. But I kind of would like to see this movie move along a little quicker. But I'm coming at it from someone who didn't grow up on it and seeing it through a 2021 lens. So it's something that I wish happened in the movie. Like I just feel like there's and it is a great movie, but there's a better movie here if you take some of this stuff out and just trim it a little bit. And I know I'm the runtime Nazi or whatever whatever I've been called by my own family. who listens to this episode, but it's true. Yeah, that happened to me this last week. I'm the runtime Nazi. Whatever, it's fine. But I do feel like there's some truth in what I'm saying with this one. But again, there's no denying the on-screen chemistry between these three, like Brian mentioned. The two not liking each other in real life. I think that comes across pretty well on the damn screen, man. Like that's to kind of tie it into something me and Dustin like pro wrestling. The best storylines 9 times out of 10 are when two guys actually don't like each other off screen. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that kind of comes across, and I think it's really good. But it just starts to run a little long, is all. Like me right now. So I'm going to pass it off to Shan.
So I understand where you're coming from. I always like this set of scenes leading into the next scene, which we'll talk about is like the best scene of the entire movie, pretty much. But they're figuring themselves out. They're figuring out how this is going to work. Like, Quint does this for a living. The other two, I mean, Hooper studies sharks, but I mean, Brody's out there. He doesn't even want to be on the water. So I think the set of scenes once they're on the boat is kind of important to like set the dynamic of where we're going to go for the end.
Right.
Like before they go out, when they went to Martha's Vineyard to film, when they go to Quint's place, it's actually like it was a little section on the water where people all had their little shacks, and they built a new one for Quint, like in a place that was vacant. Well, as they were doing all of that, like there was a guy who was an actual resident, and he was kind of getting pissed because they're like building things, painting things, and as they're like painting things, there's paint that's getting on his boats. He got pissed and he confronted them, and then he realized that the crew and the cast, like, they really didn't know much about fishing or boating in general. He ended up assisting with the production so that things could be more realistic. So that was one of those like happy accidents in this, because obviously there was a lot of those with things not working. This was one where it just kind of fell into their lap. The boat that they are on, it's called the Orca, and you would think that there's not really anything that's going to be a predator for a great white. Killer whales actually are like the one thing, so it was kind of like a nice little throw in there of this is what's going to go after the shark. In talking with Dreyfuss later on, because like you guys have mentioned, him and Robert Shaw, they did not get along. It was one of those where there was a lot of downtime because of all the issues, obviously. They went over shooting, I forget exactly how many days. It was like 3 to 4 times as many days as they were supposed to be doing. And in one of the times when they were sitting around, Robert Shaw, well documented with his drinking on set, which I'll get into a little bit more of that in the next set. But he was sitting there and he was just drinking, and he's like, really wish I could quit drinking. And Richard Dreyfuss actually took the shot glass out of his hand, tossed it in the water. Well, that was the end for them. Like, they really didn't get along after that. He actually said about Shaw later that Robert was a pretty Prometheus character, truly bigger than life, a man who intimidated me, who scared me, who exhilarated me, and I liked him. And I hated him. And I think that was a pretty good way for him to sum up, like, that all comes out on film of, at times you can tell that they absolutely can't stand each other, and then there's that little bit where it's like, okay, there's some stuff that they can agree on and get along with. And I don't know that the scenes would have played out the same if you would have had different actors in there. Or like you said, actors that actually off screen got along. Like, I agree that them actually hating each other really kind of worked in their favor to a point.
Yeah, so this set of scenes, I agree with Brian. I don't need the hospital scene at all, really. I think that, matter of fact, I don't think that Mike should have went into shock. Didn't do anything to further the story. We know the stress that I've said this before. We know the stress that Chief Brody's into it. We don't keep having to add these things to have us empathize with him, because we can do that already. We see that he cares more about the town that he just moved to than the mayor does. So that was just kind of a thing that I feel like he could have cut for runtime purposes. But then when I like the scene of the three of them getting together, I do like the scene though in the hospital where he forces the mayor to sign the paper to commission Quint. I thought that was great. He's like, you know what? Fuck you. You don't care about these people. I do. I'm not letting any more people die on my watch. We got to get this shark. And he kind of bullies the mayor into signing it. I like that part. And then I love the scene where Hooper and Brody go to, meet up with Quint. I love that scene. That's just an acting clinic by all involved. So that was great. And then, like you mentioned, Shan, I love the fact that the boat that they're going out on is named an orca when an orca is a predator of the great whites. I thought that was a great little subliminal fuck you to the shark community. No offense.
They
to all our
originally
shark
wanted,
listeners.
wanted to call
apologize
it
to all of our
the, it was going to be called the Warlock,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
doesn't play anywhere near as well.
No, I mean, it's a cool boat name, but
Yeah,
orca is
not
just
for
so
this,
fitting
though.
for the circumstances. Yeah.
If we have any shark listeners, please send all complaints to dustin@gmail.com.
Yeah, that includes San Jose Sharks if there's any hockey players that listen. But no, I think that the scene on the boat here, I'm fine with, because this scene doesn't. Well, it does kind of drag on a little bit. Having him do the chum line twice, and having him clumsy and fumbling around with the compressed air tanks, which. By the way, Mythbusters proved those tanks would not have exploded, so that was an overreaction there, Hooper. But and also, I love the fact that Hooper and Brody had this bromance before. Like, they were getting along great. And then, shit, man, you let Brody knock over one can of compressed air, and Hooper about loses his fucking mind on him. So I thought that was a little bit of an overreaction, too. But nevertheless, this set of scenes is good. There is a major flaw in this set of scenes, though. It's either this set of scenes or as we're going into the next set of scenes, but they completely cut off Brody's line when he's doubling down on, you sure you don't want to go get another boat? Like, the screen fades out and it cuts his audio, and it's really weird. It's unsettling. It almost
you're
like
right.
it
It is
feels
weird. You're right.
like an error. Like, it doesn't feel intentional. And so I thought that was bizarre, and it stood out to me. I thought, like I said, I've rented this movie on demand, I think through Amazon, and I watched it, and I was like, did this DVD that they're showing this to me, did it just skip or something? Because what the hell was that?
I'm glad you said that,
But
Dustin. I have the exact same thing. I agree.
it was a weird cut.
1000% weird edit.
Weird.
Well,
yeah.
part of it was he did improvise that line, but that wasn't the only place he tried to do it. He kind of kept throwing it in to see where it would fit. Like, I guess that was something that had been uttered around the set, and he just kind of kept throwing it into the movie, trying to figure out, like, hey, where can we make this fit?
Damn, so he's like the Oprah of that line. He's like, you get a bigger boat.
Yeah,
You get a
basically.
bigger boat.
Yeah. So two things then. Number one, Spielberg needs to get control of his actors. Number two, Roy Scheider, stop trying to, take control of this damn thing. Read your lines as they're told, unless you're told to improvise. Like, shit, because it made for a really weird scene. Like, such a classic movie should not have something that stands out as such a sore as that did. But this, I said it in the opening. I don't think that Bruce looks great in this movie. The shark, I don't think the shark looks great in this movie. But this, when the head pops up out of the water, I thought was perfect. I thought it looked okay. Yeah, because it was just a brief. We got to see it, and then it went away. And it was such a, oh shit, especially for scaling purposes, let you know how big this sumbitch is. I thought that was great. And of course, you get the iconic, you're going to need a bigger boat, that they actually reshot because I think Spielberg was watching the reactions to the premiere, and the crowd was still screaming and up in arms over seeing the shark, that they missed it. They missed him saying, you're going to need a bigger boat. So they added a little bit more of a walkway there so he could have more time to get back to Quint to tell him you're going to need a bigger boat. But iconic there. let's just go ahead and get into this next set of scenes where I got a feeling I'm gonna piss people off.
Because I'm kicking off my scene by scene saying, disclaimer, my notes will not do this scene justice, so here we go, because I think it's great. Now the three guys are eating and drinking, and Quint shows him his broken tooth, and he shows Hooper his lump under his hat on his head. Hooper now shows his moray eels injury. Hooper and Quint, exchange injury stories, trying to one-up each other. The two now share a drink to each other's leg. Hooper jokes saying a woman broke his heart. He's got the best injury, as they all share a laugh. Birdie asks about Quint's arm injury. It's a tattoo removal, USS Indianapolis. He tells him his story of his time on the boat. 1,100 men went underwater after the attack. They formed tight squares for when the sharks came for them. They lost 100 men by the end of the first dawn. 316 men came out of the water of the 1,100 who went into the water. We hear a wail, and Quint sings Farewell and Adieu again, and now Hooper and Brody join in singing. The shark crashes into the boat over and over. Quint says, start the engines, and Brody falls, into a lower section of the boat, into a puddle of water. Quint has Brody put out the fire, and now the lights are out. Quint shoots at the shark, and Brody pulls out a pistol. Next morning, we see smoke coming from the engines, and the barrel floats up again. They have Hooper grab the boat hook to grab the barrel. The shark emerges and jumps at them as they try to bring in the rope. Brody goes to make a call, then Quint breaks the radio with a bat, and Brody snaps on him. I thought that was funny. Hooper rigs up another barrel as the shark comes back. Quint gets another barrel in the shark. They chase after the shark best as the boat can. He shoots another barrel into it, and Brody shoots the shark with his pistol. 2 barrels and going down again. Quint turns the boat towards the barrels and has them snag the ropes and tie them to the stern cleat. He accidentally traps Hooper by the legs briefly. The shark starts to pull the boat, but Quint says he's taking this to the taxidermy man. It's eating through the line and breaking the cleats. Quint shoots again under the mouth. They go to untie the cleats, but it's too strong. Water floods the engines more and more, and Quint grabs his machete and cuts the ropes. The shark swims towards the boat and goes under, even with 3 barrels. Hooper can't believe it that the shark is chasing them. They're heading into the shallow water. Quint and Hooper fight as Quint puts too much pressure on the engines, and Brody tells him to stop the boat. And we got one more scene, which is the ending of all this. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, just a little peek behind the curtain. The scene notes that Nico sent us. It says "epic scene at the dinner table," and that couldn't be more right, in my opinion. And Den of Geek actually posted an article in June of 2020, right, just a little bit ago, that said that this was Spielberg's favorite scene. And there was some disagreement by a lot of folks, I think, over the years on whether or not Quint's Indianapolis story was improvised or not, and Spielberg shed some light on it. He said, he said, I remember sending the story of the Indianapolis to my friend John Milius, and said, John, read the script and maybe you can help me. John actually read the whole script and made a lot of interesting changes and adjustments. And he wrote a brilliant 8-page soliloquy about the sinking of the Indianapolis. And apparently Milius's scene was nearly 10 to 15 minutes long, though. So when Shaw, who's a writer himself, read that 10 pages, he said, I can't go on for 10 to 15 minutes just talking. Let me have a crack at it. So Shaw edited it down to 5 pages. So Spielberg summarized in the movie's 25th anniversary making of documentary. The speech in the movie is actually basically Shaw's version of Milius's version of Sackler's version. So if that helps clear or muddy the water any, I don't know. What I do know is that Shaw is epic in this scene, and I love it.
This is one of those stories, obviously, like you said, this is Spielberg's favorite scene from the movie. And it is an epic scene. You literally change complete directions. They're laughing, they're joking, and then it's literally like you just got told your entire family died, like the way that he just completely shuts down. So when the first time that they were going to film this, Robert Shaw was like, do you care if and I think it's funny that he even asked because, like I said, him drinking on set was pretty well known, but he said he was going to drink before filming to get into character. Well, he ended up getting so completely shit-faced that he ended up calling Spielberg at like 3:00 in the morning, asking how badly he had humiliated himself. And Spielberg was like, not fatally. So the next day he showed up to do the scene and he was completely sober and he nailed it. That speech is one of those ones that it's really hard to put into words, like compared to everything else in this movie.
Yeah.
He does such an amazing job in relaying the way that he tells it. I mean, you really feel like he actually had been there. And I just think that comes across so well from him. Leading into all of it, it's like, because they're joking around. The scar that's on Brody is actually real. Like, he goes like he's about to jump in before things get all serious. I guess the scar on him was he had some sort of surgery, but that was actually real. But then,
I believe it was an appendectomy.
yes, that's what it was. I was going to say, I'm like, I knew it was something basic, but so yeah, I mean, that is the one scene that when it comes to this movie that does not involve the shark probably is the most iconic scene.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, some of this boat stuff runs long in the tooth for me, but I really like this, Quint speech at the dinner table. I think it's very iconic, and it's kind of unfortunate that it comes in this set of scenes because I do think I'm like, God, I'm so ready to get to the end here, but very well delivered by Shaw, improvised or not. Like I think it really kind of helps set the scene for how much of a antagonist this shark is going to be. Especially in 1975, like. God, he almost has, and again, I'm comparing it to a movie that I relate more to, but it almost has that like Dr. Loomis-y vibe where he's kind of setting the scene for just how dangerous this shark is going to be, the same way that Dr. Loomis kind of sets the scene for just how dangerous Michael Myers is going to be. And so I kind of think those two things parallel here, where I like the speech. I think it's good. There's some other stuff here though, that I just think goes so long. Like some people love it, and if you love this movie, I understand. But they're singing at the table, and it doesn't do anything for me. I want them to stop singing, and I know that's maybe sacrilege to diehard Jaws fans, and I'm very sorry. But I'm just like, okay, I get it. They're starting to kind of come together a little bit here. And I just kind of want it to stop. I know that's bad, and I don't mean it in a mean way. I'm ready to not wrap it up. I don't want it to end. I just want it. I want to see what happens. I'm ready to get there. I'm ready to see the big climax with this shark. And so, but I do agree 1,000%. It's really hard to deny the delivery from Shaw. It's a really iconic couple of lines, and I enjoy it a lot.
I do not. I think the acting is great. Let me start by saying that.
Fair
Acting
enough.
is
Fair
phenomenal. Phenomenal. But I do not need the scene where they're all three in the boat at all. It does, like I said, it doesn't move the story forward. And when a movie's long as shit anyway, everything in it needs to be necessary. And it was an acting clinic, but it didn't do anything to move the story forward. And what I mean by that, yeah, his whole story about the Indianapolis was powerful and gripping, like holy shit. But it didn't. His death would have been equally as, I don't know, ironic, beautifully ironic, had he not been on the Indianapolis, because he's a shark fisherman. That's all you need to know for his death to. Spoiler, we're gonna get to the next scene. His death to be ironic is the fact that he's a shark fisherman. And so, I don't know. I didn't need it at all. Great acting, just hated it. Especially the singing part, like Mike said. It's just like, God damn, like, let's go. Gives it a chance for Bruce to wreck the boat, but he could have also done it just camera comes in, everybody's asleep, and then the boat starts getting rocked. Boom. I just saved you 10 minutes of the runtime. Anyway. I'm not going to really take up too much more of the time. I just wanted to say that I did not like that scene. Go ahead.
All right, here's the ending. Quint hands out.
I'm sorry. Hang on. I did I did see. I skipped ahead in my notes too far. What the hell is the obsession with the fucking harpoon guns? Also, I killed the damn thing. I get it. You want to take it into the taxidermist and you want this big trophy, but they shot this damn shark about 14 times with a harpoon gun, not once trying to kill it, just trying to attach barrels to it. That annoyed the piss out of me.
I'll actually touch on that with how it ends in the book, because actually the harpoon is kind of important.
Okay, and that's fair. I see. I haven't read the book. I'm just going off strictly the movie.
Save your time. Don't do it.
I don't plan to. But when you want to talk about Chief Brody, he keeps driving home. We're going to need a bigger boat. Yeah, especially if you plan on dragging that sumbitch in with this boat. That's not going to work. And anyway, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, just that annoyed me.
All right, Quint hands out life vests, and he asks Hooper what he can do with his spear. He wants to get in the cage and inject it with, I'm not sure, I wrote tranquilizer or poison. They drop the cage in the water, and Hooper climbs in. Quint lowers the cage, and the shark heads straight to the cage. It disappears, then bumps the backside of the cage, causing Hooper to drop the spear. My man keeps fumbling the bag a lot in this movie, though. It now attacks the cage again repeatedly, trying to get after Hooper. Hooper manages to escape out the top of the cage and swims to the bottom and hides. They pull the cage up and the beam gives way. The cage is brought up but empty. The shark jumps onto the back of the boat, sinking it, and the air tanks hits Quint's hand, causing him to lose grip. He slides down the boat into the shark's mouth, getting bitten over and over and ate and drug away. Brody throws the air tank in the shark's mouth and climbs to the top of the watchtower with a rifle. Brody stabs it in the head with a spear repeatedly until it swims off. The boat sinks rapidly. Smile, you son of a bitch, and Brody shoots the tank, blowing the shark into pieces. Hooper swims up now and unites with Brody. Brody half-assed acknowledges Quint's dead, and the two men swim back to the shore on the barrels. I used to hate the water, Brody says. And then Hooper says, I can't imagine why, as the film ends. All right, Brian, go ahead. I just got a good laugh when he's like, what about Quint? Didn't make it.
Yep. And what I love about this is, how these three guys kind of, put these like layers of protection almost, on the boat, and like little by little in these scenes, like every good battle, like every layer of that protection is kind of stripped away. Now, yes, I agree that, some, like, especially in some of these scenes, not all of them, that the shark does look fake, and once it's fully exposed and kind of out in the open, yes, it's definitely a viable complaint. And it does steal a little bit of the movie's luster. There's no doubt about that. But again, like, there's a charm to it. I can't really, explain, at least on my end. It doesn't even bother me. It's almost like those old black and white Universal monster movies to me. Like, it doesn't take away from it for me. Not to mention, like, I mean, there's a lot of shots where I think it actually looks really good. Obviously, the footage of the quote unquote real shark, when they're in the cage, even as a boy, I noticed the scale was off. Almost like the Sandlot, in a way, with the dog. I know some of that with the Sandlot is that, it was in their heads, but so maybe the comparison isn't perfect, but hopefully you get what I mean. But anyway, there's not a whole lot more I can say about the ending. I love it. I think it's amazing.
Yep. Look, man, really like this end scene. I think it's probably my favorite of the movie. Everything in the cage and even though we do see the shark a little too much for my liking, you kind of touched on it, Brian. Yeah, it looks fake now. 1975, I probably would have shit my pants. So I understand. I'm willing to forgive it because I'm not trying to view it through 2021 eyes. Try to view it as if I were watching it back then. Does this shark hold up? No. But I can kind of set it aside and view it as simply, this is a really good shark attack scene. I think the suspense, the music, the way it's shot, I think it all holds up really, really well and kind of makes me forgive how the shark looks. I think it's great. And, the death of Quint would be awesome if you were able to use some more modern technology with it. Like, I think it's really, really good. unfortunately, it does suffer from how the shark looks. So that I think that's just kind of what you said, Brian, where it doesn't bother me in this movie. In other shark movies, it definitely would bother me. But in this one, I just kind of have a spot for it where I can forgive it because other stuff around it is done so well. So I really love this end scene. I think it's done phenomenally. I think it's shot so well, and I like the end where they're just kind of looking at each other and they have like the little laughs. I kind of like that. It adds a little bit of charm. So the opening however many minutes and this however many minutes I think are both really really well done.
So, to quote Marty McFly from Back to the Future 2, shark still looks fake. Had to throw that in there. So this is the one spot where it has always driven me nuts, is when the shark literally like jumps out of the water onto the boat. Like that's the one thing I really hated when they do show the shark, like the thing coming almost completely out of the water. It's just always irked me because that is the point where the shark, that's a fake shark. Like, no question there. But you had some of the footage where you actually do have a real shark. They had, I forget what the couple's name was, but they actually did underwater filming. Originally, even in the script, in the book, Hooper dies. In the script, originally, they were going to have him die in the cage. Basically, the minute he goes down in the cage, the shark busts through the cage, eats him, he's done. Well, they got this incredible footage of the shark jumping on top of the cage when they were shooting with the live shark. But the guy who was they used a guy who was like 4'11" or something, so that the shark would look closer to what the mechanical one was. Well, of course, when that shark attacked the cage, the actor wasn't in the cage at the time, and they're like, this footage is too good, like we can't not use it. So they changed the script so that Hooper could live. When it gets to the point of the shark like actually coming out of the water, this end set of scenes, while I do love it, it is one of those that does kind of emphasize where earlier on the quick glimpses of the shark really was the best option for what happened.
Right.
And it's funny because, like, yes, it looks fake, but I also remember being 13 years old and being at Universal, and I got to ride the Jaws ride, which I'm grateful I got to do before they ever took it away. I remember being inside the boathouse, and where I was sitting on the ride, that mechanical shark popped up right next to me, and I just about died. So, and that's it. It's like, they looked similar. I mean, so obviously it's fake looking, but when you're like right there next to it, a little bit of a different feeling. The stunt double for Richard Dreyfuss actually was played by Dick Warlock, who played Michael Myers in Halloween 2, which throws it back to, ironically, how the boat was going to be called the Warlock, so I thought that was a funny one. Dustin, you had talked on before about like the Mythbusters stuff and everything. And they had run through it. It's actually, if they ran it during Shark Week, if I remember correctly, originally. And of course, it's on YouTube like everything else. Like, it's definitely worth going to watch to see like all the different stuff that they did. The sound that the shark makes when it's dying is actually the basic sound from the creature from the Black Lagoon, which I didn't know. And Spielberg had also used it at the end of his movie Duel when the truck's going over.
Oh, we needed to do that movie, by the way, Duel. I think we need to look at that one. It'd be a good discussion episode, I think.
It would be. So, and then the other, because of all the problems and everything, when they went to shoot the final scene of the movie, Spielberg got everything set up, made sure everything was lined up good to go before they were going to blow the shark up, and he left. Like, totally bailed. He was done. Because he was afraid that he had heard rumors that, like, the cast and crew, like, after all the shit that he put them through, they were going to toss him in the water. So he left. And I think I remember hearing that has actually kind of become, like, a trademark of his, that he is never there for the last day of shooting a film, that he's just kind of kept that up.
Huh.
And then, just a little link to the second movie, So in the very beginning of the second movie, the scuba divers are down taking photographs. What they're actually taking photographs is the sunken orca ship.
Ah.
Yeah, so I really like the ending to this film. I think that it does a great job of playing off of the built-in tension that we felt in suspense. Here's the thing, though. I don't think that the shark looks great, especially when it flops on the deck and flops like a fish. SpongeBob SquarePants. It kind of like I didn't really like. I don't know. It was just something about the way it looked on there. You could tell it was animatronic, I guess. But that's okay. I really like you mentioned. That was a fun fact there about Dick Warlock playing that. And I was going to mention that earlier when you said that the original name of the ship was going to be the Warlock. I was going to say, like, I wonder if that had anything to do with it, like their plans, but I don't know. But yeah, shout out to Dick Warlock, legend. And the thing about the ending is I did not like the way Quint went out, man. Like he's sliding down. You're going to tell me all we know about sharks. Maybe they don't know this in 1975, but I've known this since I was knee high to a grasshopper, and I live in East Tennessee, so it's not like common knowledge because I grew up on the beach, because I didn't. Punch a damn shark in the nose, kick it. It'll leave you alone. And so just kick that son of a bitch right in the nose as hard as you can. He'll probably slide off the deck and you'll buy some time there. But he didn't. He just slid right into his mouth. You're going to tell me, sliding down the deck, you had nothing else you could do but go right into its mouth. You couldn't even extend your legs and hold yourself off of his mouth. I don't know. Maybe I'm hung up on the wrong thing. But
his death in the book was worse, though. Literally, I forgot to mention, we were talking about the stuff with the harpoon. So the shark in the book dies being stabbed. Basically, it bleeds out from being stabbed by the harpoon multiple times. Quint literally dies because his leg gets caught up in a rope that's attached to the harpoon, and he gets drugged down with the dying shark. So he at least got a better death in this movie than he did in the book.
Yeah, that's fair. Another thing that I didn't like is Brody throwing the air tank in the shark's mouth. Couple things. Either that shark is going to bite down and puncture the air tank, and it's going to explode that way, or not explode, whatever you want to believe it would do. Or it's going to swallow it whole. I have a hard time believing that shark would swim around for that long with the air tank just sitting in its mouth like that. And I don't know. It just seemed a little bit lazy. Well, maybe not lazy because he wanted the big explosion. So it's just a way to get it happen. I don't know. I didn't like the fact that the air tank was in the mouth for that long and he got a clear shot and blew it up.
I agree.
That kind of bothered me a little bit. And then another thing, we get Hooper reappears from the watery abyss, and they just doggy paddle their way back on into shore. Let me ask you something. How many sharks are in the water? Is that the only shark that exists? They already caught the tiger shark, which also, going back to that, I thought it was hilarious when he goes, "That's a tiger shark," and you had that one Jamoke just go, "Oh, what?" Like, God, that killed me. But so you already had a tiger shark that they caught, they killed. You got this great white, and you feel comfortable just swimming back in. There's other scary shit in the ocean. If I just had a near-death experience with a shark, I probably wouldn't want to just swim. I'd probably, they didn't really have any other option, but and goes back to jackass Quint destroying the phone. I probably would have thrown his ass overboard at that point. But anyway, it was a good ending. It's just, it does have its little things that I'm like, come on, could have done that a little bit better or a little bit differently, in my opinion. But who am I to criticize Spielberg?
Any more final thoughts on the ending before we jump into a fan question?
No, sir.
All right, Michelle Mirza, another great friend of the show. She commented on Twitter when we announced we were doing this tonight. She said, "Great choice. Would you guys rank this as one of the top 10 horror movies of all time?" I'll go first real quick. On my personal list, is it a top 10? No, but just based on impact and what it done for just movies in general, I would probably say, yeah, top 10.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna cop out probably and pretty much say the same thing Nico did. I pretty much agree with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think as far as impact goes and everything, I think it's definitely a top 10. And the debate of whether it's horror or not is always flabbergasted me. Of course, it's horror. It's a man-eating shark
Mm.
coming after people. No, it is without a shadow of a doubt a horror film. Are you you're out of your mind if you
I've
think it's
never
not a horror
understood
film?
that
It makes
argument.
zero sense to me
You
that it's not a horror
you ready
film.
for the rebuttal?
Sure, but I'm
You ever
going to
seen
say
the
you're
movie?
wrong.
You ever seen the movie The Ghost in the Darkness?
No.
Shan, have you?
It's been a long time.
So my question is, if this is horror, is A Ghost in the Darkness horror? It's the same concept. There's a killer animal, but it's lions in Africa, and they got to hunt it and kill it. I think this movie is more adventure and suspense than it is actual horror. It scared the shit out of people because it's plausible.
Right.
Well, that's
But
horror. That's horror.
you only, I don't.
That's horror.
So A Ghost in the Darkness is horror.
Yes. Ghost in the Darkness is horror.
It could be to some people. I mean,
If
it's
it did the exact
subgenre.
same thing as Jaws, then yes.
All right. I mean, I don't know. It's
It's okay.
I can see I can see
It
both
can be
sides of it.
subjective. I
But that
understand.
being said, yeah, I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Right, that's fair.
But also, I agree. This doesn't sniff my top 10 favorite horror movies or favorite movies in general. I think it's a classic movie. I know it seems like I've shit on it for the past hour and a half or however long we've been doing this, but I don't mean to. It's just not my cup of tea as far as keeping my attention and not kind of boring me with how drawn out it is.
Shannon,
For me-
I was about to say, do I even need to ask you?
Well, that's the thing. It's my favorite movie of all time. Like, there's no question to that. In the realm of if I were to only list horror movies, I mean, it's still going to be in there for me, but do I think as a whole, I mean, I don't think that it would be the number one, but it definitely, like you guys have said, it has an impact. Like, you can see the way it is popped up in different pop culture in so many ways over the last 4 or so decades that, I mean, it has had an impact. But there's lots of other horror movies that have also had an impact. So I would say as a whole, like when you're just talking in general, like to be objective, it belongs in there, but not as high on the list as maybe some of the other stuff. But like I said, obviously from my standpoint, it's my favorite movie of all time. So it would be up there. But to look at it objectively, it would be lower on the list. But you can't deny the effect that it has had in different movies throughout. Like, I have different things jotted down of just like movies where it's like, okay, this is obviously direct reference, this is where they got it, all of that. Like in places you wouldn't even think that. Obviously shark movies are a given, but I mean things like Mallrats or Airplane, there's Jaws references in them. Like, you don't realize how many there really are throughout things until you kind of start looking into it.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and knock out some fun facts real quick. I only got 2 of them. A lot have been said tonight. I'm pretty sure a lot of us probably saved this one, but I just thought this one was really cool. Several decades after the film's release, Lee Fierro, who played Miss Kentner, walked into a seafood restaurant and noticed that the menu had an Alex Kentner sandwich. She commented that she had played his mother so many years ago. The owner of the restaurant ran out to meet her, and he was none other than Jeffrey Voorhees, who had played her son. They had not seen each other since the original movie shoot. I think that's really cool. And the last one I have is over 67 million people in the U.S. went to see the film when it initially released in 1975, making it the first summer blockbuster. That's 67 million people in 75. That's incredible.
Wow. Yeah, no doubt. I'll go ahead and go. I guess I got 3. Charlton Heston was so annoyed with being rejected for the role of Brody that he later made disparaging comments about Steven Spielberg and vowed never to work with him. He later turned down Spielberg's offer of the role General Stilwell in 1941, which was actually in 1979. Director Steven Spielberg shot roughly 25% of the film from water level to provide the viewers with the perspective as if they were treading water. And I thought that obviously was tremendous. And Brody's dog in the movie was actually Steven Spielberg's real dog, Elmer.
Real quick, you mentioned Charlton Heston. So that Spielberg wanted Heston at first, but then decided against it because Heston was known as being the hero and playing such triumphant roles that he didn't want the viewer going into the movie knowing that the hero would win.
That makes sense.
Since I said that, I'll go ahead and go now. I've just got a couple here. So despite the film's mammoth box office returns, Robert Shaw did not earn a penny out of it. He was facing heat from the IRS for tax evasion, and due to working in countries as diverse as the U.S., Canada, and Ireland, he had to forego his salary to make amends. So that sucks.
Wow.
And then they got a few things about the movie here as far as acclaims. Jaws was voted the 6th scariest film of all time by Entertainment Weekly. The Shark was ranked the 18th greatest villain of all time on the AFI's list of American Film Institute's list of 100 heroes and villains. This film was ranked the 2nd greatest thriller on the AFI's list of 100 thrills. It was voted number 5 on Empire Magazine's 500 greatest movies of all time. That was back in 2008. It was voted the 48th greatest film by the American Film Institute on their list of 100 greatest movies in 1998. In 2008, it dropped 8 spots to number 56, but still up there. Bruce the Shark only had 4 minutes of runtime or screen time in the entire film. So we're 2 hours and 4 minutes, I believe, is the runtime. And so we went 2 full hours without seeing the shark. The last thing I have, and that's, of course, because of how Spielberg wasn't really pleased with how it looked, and I agree with him. The last thing I have is Jeffrey Kramer, who played Deputy Hendricks. He was also in an episode of Ally McBeal. Hayden Panettiere was in 12 episodes of that show, and she co-starred in Scream 4 with David Arquette. Take it away.
Okay. So Bryan Singer actually named his production company Bad Hat Harry Productions after the line that Brody utters when they're on the beach right before Alex gets killed. There was 3 different sharks when they made the movie. One from the right, one from the left, and then the full shark. It was, each of them cost, and this was at the time, I don't know what this translates to now. I believe this was the cost at the time, not the translation. $250,000 each. So not cheap. Greg Nicotero from K&B, he actually restored the last surviving shark mold back in 2019. It'll be on display at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. Be about the only reason that I would ever decide to go out to California again. Would be to go out and see that probably. And the last thing, in the opening of the film, Spielberg used squawking birds over the Universal logo, which was a direct homage to Hitchcock's opening for the birds, because he did the same thing there.
Yeah, so real quick, a little dumb fun fact that no one had is the shark Bruce in Finding Nemo was named after the secret name of this shark in the movie Jaws. So haha, for all you Disney people. Okay. So this movie was made for a cool $9 million, a little low budget for Spielberg, but made box office $472 million. And you kind of touched on how many people saw this movie, Nico. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Dude, that's a ton of people, man. My mom told me she saw the movie in theaters, and she said she waited over 2 hours in line to watch it. So that's awesome. Shan, do you want to go first or last tonight for the Jaws review?
I'll go last.
All right, I'll just go ahead and go first. Favorite kill, I spoiled it earlier. I did not pick Quint. And the amazing thing, like this movie, like regardless if you like it or not, blah, 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 last year they uploaded the final scene to YouTube, and it already has over 57 million views. That's crazy. My favorite kill, I spoiled it earlier, the boater in the estuary. I love seeing that shot of the shark come up. I think that was awesome. and like Dustin mentioned, you see the blood. I thought it was great. Least favorite, I kind of just picked Ben Gardner off screen. I mean, it was a cool jump scare, but you didn't see his actual kill. My little summary is I haven't seen this movie before this review in many, many years, and I have to say I loved it. It was a blast all the way through. The camaraderie between the three was great, and I'm gonna have to. I mean, I know Steven Spielberg he's way better in film than me. I disagree. I think the shark looks pretty good, considering it was 1975. And if you look at the sharks in like another movie I like, Deep Blue Sea, it looks way better. And I watched another shark movie called The Reef earlier a couple weeks ago. You don't even see a shark, so the fact that it put a shark on screen, I applaud them. If you look to the past of horror, this is one of the only ones I'd say is still the best of its quote unquote subgenre. Like this is the best shark movie and probably the best creature feature that I can think of. I already said that. Only nitpicks I have are the sharks. They can't swim or go backwards, so that's kind of a science mishap. And I kind of agree with Dustin. I think this is a horror movie, 100%. But the adventurous music at the end kind of takes away from the horror feel. But I still wrote very good movie, and I gave it a 9.
Hey, I'll go ahead and go since. So what I wrote down that that this is a product of its time. I wanted to point out that I mean there's like zero diversity in this movie, which honestly is ridiculous because I mean you can say that that's of the time period, but I mean hell, Star Trek was in '66 and was super diverse. But anyway, but the good part about the movies back then, I think where I would like to get back to is where the budgets were low. So more focus had to kind of be on the character development and story. And, and there's less focus on the next explosion or the next action scene or whatever. I like a good bit of character development. Now, I mean, did this maybe have a little bit too much some places? Yeah, we talked about that. But this is almost a perfect example of where I think like, writing, directing, performance, like the whole thing kind of gelled perfectly together. And since I didn't get a dad joke off in this entire episode, I'll just say before my rating that I think this movie is fantastic.
Oh.
Anyway, my favorite death is Quint's. Least favorite death. I just didn't pick one. I just picked one. I said it was going to be one of the ones that was off screen for sure. Although I don't want to pick the first one because how epic that opening scene is. I actually gave this one a 9 as well, Nico.
Let's go ahead and sandwich mine in because I want to start on a high note and end on a high note. So let's get mine out of the way. But I think, like I said, this is a classic movie. There's no denying the impact. However, impact does not always translate. So that's where I'm at. Impact does not mean that it withheld the test of time. Impact does not mean that I enjoy it. I can appreciate it without enjoying it. Like the Beatles. Sorry, Mike. That being said, my favorite kill is the boater in the old lady's pond. Definitely. My least favorite kill was actually Quint's, and it's not because the effects. That was great. Like the blood, we got more blood right there than you got the whole movie almost. But it's just how mad it made me. Like you're a grizzled veteran in the shark game. You couldn't elude a shark that's beached on your boat. Like God damn it, that frustrated me. That being said, and also like I said, the animatronics of the boat flopping on the deck right there just kind of took me out of it a little bit. That being said, movie's a classic. It's not one that I'm going to rush to watch. Definitely not ever watching the sequels because I remember watching, I think, one of them when I was a kid, and I remember it being bad back then, so definitely not watching the sequels. But I gave it a 6.5.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh. So again, I think it's a classic. I enjoy it for what it is. It's not something I want to pop on all the time. But I do think when I'm in the right mood for it, I still think it holds up pretty well. and I can get a good watch out of it. It is a little long for me, but that's just me. That's just a thing I'm going to stand on the mountaintops and scream to. But again, classic acting, classic dialogue, classic filmmaking as far as Spielberg goes. So really hard to knock it too much. My favorite kill is Quint. My least favorite is one of the off-screen ones because there's a decent amount. But like Brian said, the first one doesn't really count to me. So yeah, my so I had a hard time with my rating for this, partially because I I want to rate it for what it is and not necessarily my enjoyment factor because I go back and forth on how much I enjoy this movie when I watch it. But it's really hard to go any lower than this. So it's a classic. I hold it on high, and so I'm going to give it a 7.5.
I've been watching this movie, like I said, for years and years. And at different points in my life, I've had a different appreciation for it in different ways. Like, as a kid, obviously, it was just a cool shark movie. Like, as I continue to enjoy it now, I enjoy watching the documentaries and new things that they'll put out and reading different books and, like, getting the behind the scenes stuff. So I've kind of developed a new appreciation for it on both sides of it as being something that I can enjoy watching if I want to just sit down and enjoy the movie. But I can also enjoy everything that went into this movie and how it was lightning in a bottle. It never should have happened. If the movie that they had originally wanted to make had been made, I don't know that we would be talking about it like this at this point. It would just be another shark movie. I don't think it would have had the impact, any of that. I mean, obviously, I rate it as a 10. It's my favorite. I don't know that that's ever going to change. In regards to the favorite kill, Quince is always the most entertaining to me. For my least favorite, this is going to sound kind of odd, but it's actually Alex. And the reason for that is because, like I said, if you go on YouTube, you can find what the original version was supposed to look like, and it is utterly, like, terrifying to see. So to me, there actually was, like, a better death for him versus you don't really see anything other than an arm flailing and some blood flying up in the air. Like, yeah, obviously the shark was still going to look kind of fake, so you would have lost a little bit with that. But I mean, it's a scary freaking thing to see. So I seriously recommend everybody go on YouTube and find it and watch it, and you'll understand what I'm saying. So from that standpoint, definitely not my favorite. But it's not that I don't like it. It's just I had to pick something. So that was kind of the way I went about that one.
Yeah, so that gives us, with your 10, 7.5, 9, 9, 6.5, that gives us a composite rating of 8.4. IMDb has it as an 8. So we're pretty much spot on there.
Oh, yeah. What do you know? It's like we know what we're doing right there, right, Mike? Any more final thoughts on Jaws before I just give a quick shout out to our blood donors?
Last thing that I want to say is I had it in my notes here. The beer that they're drinking on the boat, Narragansett, is actually a really damn good beer. And it's a New England beer that for some reason there's a English pub in Knoxville, Tennessee that carries it. That's where I like to go watch my English Premier League soccer. And they carry it, and I tried it, and it's really good. And Shan, I still have those cans I'm going to mail you. I found them the other day. I was like, holy shit, I never mailed this. So, yeah, I have those for you. They'll be coming to you soon as I can get to the post office.
That's awesome.
Shan, really appreciate it. Oh, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So just really quick, I know we've kind of said this on the show before. First of all, thank you, Shan, for coming on. I thought you were great.
Absolutely.
And again, Shan has been a fan for a very long time. She deserved this spotlight of one of her favorite movies ever. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Shan around Christmas time baked us all a bunch of cookies. They were great. They were cool. They were creative, and I've never received anything like it. And so I've never had a chance to say thank you to you that wasn't Twitter message form. So I wanted to say thank you and let all our fans know. Shan is one of the very, very, very loyal listeners, and we hope we did her movie justice tonight.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, we all echo what Mike just said, and to be fair, this was kind of a very intimidating movie to take on. It's so highly regarded.
Absolutely. It scared the shit out of me, man.
And even though I disagree with Dustin's rating, I applaud you for at least saying it. That you like you kept it real. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, I agree.
Let's because it's not easy to say you hate a classic like me with the birds. Let's shout out our blood donors real quick. Sorry, man. Legendary blood donors: Miss Joe Swinford, Mr. Sean Irwin, Mr. Matt Sears, our fellow co-host tonight, Miss Shan Petrusevich. Thank you. Miss Michelle Mirza and my friend Austin Graham. Dream Warriors, Tasha Reed and my man Hunter Nelson, and camp counselors Mickey McCrane and Mr. Jared Summers. We just want to thank you all so much for being some donors and helping us out financially and helping us keep these mics hot and the computers going. We really appreciate that. Y'all got any more final thoughts before we close this out?
No, that's it. Thank you again, Shan, for being on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Mike, let's close the episode out. You say, tell our audience what next week's pick is. I know Brian's really looking forward to it.
All right, guys. See you later. Have a good one.
Listen. My birthday pick, I put it off. My birthday was over. It's almost 3 months ago now. But I decided we were kind of doing theme months, and we're letting our blood donors pick, and I'm all for that. And there was an open spot here on the calendar, so I decided to make this my birthday pick. And it's about that time that we review the dreaded, according to Brian, Halloween 2 from 2009. So that's Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which I understand the hate, but I think it's going to lead to Brian's least favorite quote, a good discussion episode.
It's about damn time someone other than me picked a Rob Zombie movie. Let's go.
Mike picked
Three from Hell. Come on, man.
That was.
And he picked Rob Zombie's first Halloween.
Well, that's before I was on the show.
That's right.
That's before I was on the show.
I mean, technically, he's picked more than you have so far, Dustin, and you're the super fan.
Just don't make me watch 31. That's all I'm asking.
Listen, it's not a competition. We don't have to pick more.
I'm picking 31. I'm picking Lords of Salem. Yeah. And we're going to do an instant reaction to The Munsters when that one comes out.
Speaking of 31, I rated Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie number 31 of 31 on 31 Halloween.
So this should be fun.
I don't remember asking, Brian.
Oh, I was just letting you know, man. In case you
Anywho, let's go ahead and wrap this up. We're 2 hours and 24 minutes into it. I think enough's been said. Shan, thank you again so much for joining us for Jaws. This was a classic.
Thanks for having me.
This was a great episode. There was nobody else we could have that would do as good of no one knows this movie like you do. So we appreciate all of our fans and listeners, and y'all have a good one. Just want to remind everybody.